Thinking Fast and Slow is Daniel Kahneman's synthesis of decades of research on human judgment and decision-making. Published in 2011, it explains why we make predictably irrational choices. Kahneman is a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in Economics for showing that people do not make decisions the way economists assume. We are not rational calculators. We are biased, lazy, and often wrong, and our mistakes follow patterns. Kahneman divides the mind into two systems. System 1 is fast, automatic, and intuitive. It operates without conscious effort. When you see a face and instantly know someone is angry, that is System 1. When you read a headline and form an immediate opinion, that is System 1. It is efficient and usually works. But it is also prone to systematic errors. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and analytical. It requires effort and attention. When you solve a complex math problem or evaluate multiple options, that is System 2. It is accurate but lazy. It only activates when necessary. Most of the time, System 1 is in control. System 2 is expensive. It burns calories, requires focus, and feels like work. So your brain defaults to System 1 whenever possible. This creates predictable biases. System 1 is overconfident, substitutes easier questions for hard ones, and mistakes familiarity for truth. It jumps to conclusions with minimal information. And System 2 is too lazy to override it unless forced. If you are interested in understanding how your mind actually works, not how you think it works, subscribe to SnapOldWisdom. We break down the books that reveal the hidden forces shaping your decisions. Subscribe now and let us get into why you are not as rational as you believe. One of the most important biases Kahneman describes is anchoring. When making estimates, people rely too heavily on the first number they encounter. If a store lists a jacket at $500, then discounts it to $300, you feel like you are getting a deal. The $500 anchor makes $300 seem reasonable. But if the jacket were listed at $300 initially, you might think it is overpriced. The anchor shapes your judgment, even when it is irrelevant. Another bias is availability. People judge the frequency or likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. After seeing news coverage of a plane crash, people overestimate the danger of flying. Plane crashes are vivid and memorable, so they feel common. Car accidents are far more frequent, but less memorable. Availability leads you to fear the wrong things. What you remember is not the same as what is statistically likely. The representativeness heuristic is when people judge probability based on similarity to a stereotype. Kahneman gives the example of Linda, described as a philosophy major concerned with social justice. Is Linda more likely to be a bank teller or a bank teller who is active in the feminist movement? Most people say the second, but that is mathematically impossible. The set of feminist bank tellers is a subset of all bank tellers. The answer feels right, but violates basic probability. Kahneman also explains why we are bad at predicting the future. We suffer from the planning fallacy. Projects take longer and cost more than we expect because we focus on the best case scenario and ignore base rates. If most projects like yours run over budget, yours probably will too. But you think yours is special. You focus on the details of your specific plan and ignore the statistical reality of similar projects. Loss aversion is one of the most powerful findings in behavioral economics. People feel the pain of a loss about twice as strongly as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $100 hurts more than winning $100 feels good. This explains why people hold on to losing investments too long, avoid necessary risks, and make choices to avoid losses, even when it means missing gains. We are wired to protect what we have. The endowment effect is related. Once you own something, you value it more than you did before you owned it. If someone offers to buy your coffee mug, you demand more money than you would have paid for it. Ownership changes how you see value. This is why people overvalue their houses, refuse to sell stocks at a loss, and why negotiations break down. Both sides think they are being reasonable, but both are biased by ownership. Kahneman introduces prospect theory, which describes how people actually make decisions under risk. Traditional economics assumes people weigh outcomes by their absolute value. Prospect theory says people weigh outcomes by how they change your current situation. You evaluate gains and losses from a reference point, not from zero. A $100 gain when you expect 50 feels great. A $100 gain when you expect 150 feels like a loss. Context matters more than absolute value. Framing effects show that how a question is asked changes the answer. If a surgery has a 90% survival rate, people are more likely to choose it than if it has a 10% mortality rate. Same information, different frame. System 1 reacts to the emotional tone, not the math. Politicians, marketers, and negotiators use framing constantly. The way information is presented influences your decision more than the information itself. Kahneman explains why experts are often overconfident. People mistake familiarity with competence. A financial analyst who has made many predictions feels confident, but their accuracy is no better than chance. Subjective confidence does not correlate with objective accuracy. Experts are good at constructing plausible narratives, but bad at predicting. Complexity creates the illusion of understanding. The more you know, the more confident you become, even when you should not be. The illusion of validity is when people see patterns and randomness. Stock traders analyze past performance and believe they can predict future returns. Sports commentators explain why a team won in ways that sound convincing, but have no predictive power. Humans are pattern-seeking machines. We see cause and effect even when outcomes are random. This makes us feel we understand the world, but it leads to bad predictions. The halo effect is when one positive trait influences how you see everything else. If someone is attractive, you assume they are also smart and kind. If a company has a good product, you assume it is well managed. First impressions color all subsequent judgments. This is why branding matters, why scandals destroy reputations so thoroughly, and why hiring decisions are often based on gut feeling rather than evidence. Kahneman discusses the two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives in the present. The remembering self creates stories about the past. When you evaluate whether you enjoyed a vacation, you do not average every moment. You remember the peak and the end. A vacation with a great middle and a terrible final day will be remembered as bad. The remembering self dominates decision-making, even though the experiencing self does all the living. This explains why people endure painful experiences for a good ending. A colonoscopy with a less painful final minute is remembered as less unpleasant than a shorter colonoscopy with a more painful end. Duration matters less than peaks and endings. This has implications for everything from medical procedures to customer service. People do not remember the total experience. They remember the highlights and the finish. Kahneman is skeptical of intuition in most domains. Intuition works when you have immediate feedback and lots of practice. A chess master develops reliable intuition because they play thousands of games and see the results immediately. A CEO making strategic decisions does not get immediate feedback and plays in a constantly changing environment. Their intuition is unreliable, yet they feel just as confident as the chess master. The book also covers regression to the mean, a statistical concept people consistently misunderstand. Extreme outcomes tend to be followed by more average outcomes. A student who scores unusually high on one test will probably score closer to average on the next, not because they got worse, but because the first score included luck. Coaches who yell at athletes after bad performance and praise them after good performance think yelling works because performance improves after criticism. But it would have improved anyway. Kahneman argues that most people are overconfident about their own abilities. The better than average effect means most drivers think they are better than average. Most managers think they are better than average. Statistically, this is impossible. But everyone has access to their own internal experience and limited access to others. You know why you made your decisions. You do not know why others made theirs. So you assume your reasoning is better. Here is what you do with this book. First, slow down when making important decisions. System 1 wants to jump to conclusions. Force System 2 to activate. Write down your reasoning. Consider alternatives. Ask what evidence would change your mind. The act of deliberate thinking counteracts bias. It does not eliminate it, but it reduces it. Most bad decisions happen because you did not think hard enough. Second, seek outside views. When making predictions or plans, ignore your specific situation for a moment. Look at base rates. How long did similar projects take? What percentage of startups succeed? What is the average outcome for people in your position? The inside view focuses on your unique circumstances. The outside view uses statistics. The outside view is almost always more accurate. Third, be aware of framing. When someone presents information, ask how it would sound framed differently. A 10% failure rate is a 90% success rate. A potential 20% return is also a potential 20% loss. Reframing does not change reality, but it changes how you feel about reality. If your gut reaction changes based on framing, your gut is being manipulated. Fourth, expect regression to the mean. If you just experienced an extreme outcome, good or bad, the next outcome will probably be more average. Do not overreact to one data point. Do not assume a hot streak will continue or a bad streak is permanent. Luck exists. Performance fluctuates. The universe is noisier than you think. What feels like a pattern is often randomness. Thinking Fast and Slow became a bestseller and influenced fields from economics to medicine to public policy. Governments created behavioral insights teams to apply Kahneman's findings to policy design. Businesses used nudges to improve decision-making. Doctors reconsidered how they present treatment options. The book popularized ideas that had been confined to academic journals for decades and made them accessible to a general audience. Critics argue that some findings from behavioral economics have failed to replicate. The replication crisis in psychology has called into question some of the studies Kahneman cites. He has acknowledged this and emphasized that science is self-correcting. Some effects are real and robust. Others are weaker or context-dependent. The core insight remains. People are predictably irrational, the specifics of which biases are strongest, in which contexts are still being refined. Others criticize the book for being too pessimistic about human rationality. Yes, we make mistakes, but we also invented science, built civilizations, and solved complex problems. Kahneman focuses on failures because those are what his research studied. But the fact that System 1 makes errors does not mean humans are hopelessly irrational. It means we need to be aware of our limitations and design systems that compensate for them. The value of the book is not that it makes you immune to bias. You will still anchor, fall for framing, and be overconfident. Knowing about biases does not eliminate them. But awareness helps. You can catch yourself mid-mistake. You can design decisions to avoid predictable errors. You can build habits that force System 2 to engage. You cannot debug your brain completely, but you can run better error checking. Here is the bottom line. Thinking Fast and Slow explains that your brain has two systems. System 1 is fast, automatic, and biased. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and lazy. Most decisions are made by System 1, which leads to predictable errors. Anchoring makes you rely on irrelevant numbers. Availability makes you fear the wrong things. Loss aversion makes you avoid necessary risks. Overconfidence makes experts bad at predictions. The remembering self distorts how you evaluate experiences. The book teaches that you are not as rational as you think. Your intuition is often wrong, and slowing down improves decisions. It won a Nobel Prize, and changed how we understand judgment. This video was created by combining human research and scriptwriting with AI-assisted visuals and production. Links to the book and related resources are in the description below.